Hello and welcome to According to Wes. Today's third episode, AI in Governance, Between Efficiency and Surveillance. From predictive analytics for resource allocation to facial recognition at border points, artificial intelligence is quietly entering the halls of power in Africa. But is it helping citizens or watching them? In this episode of According to Wes, we look at how AI is transforming governance, what that means for freedom, transparency, and democracy. So we ask, what happens when governments use artificial intelligence? Does it lead to better service delivery, or are we simply building digital systems of control? From Kenya to Uganda, Rwanda to Nigeria, African governments are adopting AI technologies. Some are imported and some are homegrown. When you look at governance, how public services are delivered and how decisions are made, AI is entering this sphere with several key ways. As you can look at service automation, think about chatbots for tax inquiries or automated e-citizen portals. AI is increasingly being used behind the scenes to process applications for national IDs, permits, or licenses. And this is aimed at reducing backlogs and human errors that are prominent in these areas. Look at data-driven decision making, where AI's predictive power comes in. Governments are exploring predictive analytics for resource allocation, for instance, identifying which regions are most at risk for food insecurity. They're also using risk scoring models to decide who to audit for tax purposes or which schools might need more urgent funding. When you look at surveillance and security, this is the most controversial area because this is where the government is deploying facial recognition cameras, the creation of comprehensive digital IDs, and the use of tools to monitor social media. Let's take a look at some of the examples in Africa. You can look at Rwanda, the smart governance model. Rwanda is a prominent adopter of technology in governance. As part of its Safe City initiative, China supplied facial recognition cameras that have been installed in the capital, Kigali, to enhance security. The Irembo platform, the government's e-service portal, is another example. It uses data to streamline over 100 public services, from birth certificates to driver's licenses. And while these initiatives have improved efficiency, they've also drawn a little bit of scrutiny. There are reports from human rights organizations like Freedom House and Article 19 that have raised concerns about digital surveillance and the use of spyware, which they argue could stew for dissent in a country with a tightly controlled political environment. When you look at Kenya, the digital IDs and its policing technologies, when you look at the Huduma Number project, it was created as a single unified digital identity for all citizens to access services. However, this project was met with significant legal challenges. In 2021, the Kenyan High Court halted the rollout of the Huduma card, ruling that the government has failed to conduct data protection impact assessment. And this is a very crucial step that is required by the country's Data Protection Act. Critics like the Nubian Rights Forum argued that the system risked deepening the exclusion of marginalized communities who already struggle to obtain identification documents. Another front is the concept of predictive policing. It has been explored. There is a master's thesis from Kenyatta University, which studied the efficacy of predictive policing with the National Police Service in Nairobi. So while this shows official interest and research into using, crime statistics to forecast hotspots, concrete evidence of widespread active pilot program in informal settlements like Chibera, and its specific outcomes, it all remains limited. The primary risk highlighted by some of the global studies is that such systems, if trained on biased historical data, could reinforce the over-policing of already marginalized areas. And then you come to Nigeria, where we have social media and the question of monitoring. In June 2021, the Nigerian government suspended Twitter, an act which was seen as a response to the platform's role in amplifying dissent, particularly in the EndSARS protests. And academic researchers and tech companies have analyzed political sentiment in Nigeria on social media using AI. There is no direct public evidence that the Nigerian government itself deployed any specific AI-powered monitoring tools to track opposition narratives during that ban. But the context of the shutdown and global trends in digital surveillance have led digital rights advocates to warn about the potential for state actors in using such technologies to monitor and suppress free speech, and often without a clear legal framework or even public transparency. And then you come to Uganda with our national IDs, which is now mandatory for accessing many services in the public sector. There's been a report from the Collaboration on International ICT Policy for Eastern and Southern Africa. They have documented how citizens, particularly in regions like Karamoja, are denied access to essential services due to difficulties in obtaining the ID or errors in their data. The government is also actively increasing its surveillance capabilities in 2024 and even in this year, 2025. The UCC was procuring advanced social media monitoring systems with officials citing AI capabilities to track hate speech and misinformation. And this is increasingly being, criticized by digital rights groups as a tool that could be used to intimidate government critics ahead of the 2026 elections. In 2022, there was a report by Unwanted Witness titled Parliament's Failure to Regulate Surveillance Threatens Human Rights in Uganda. And it highlighted that millions of dollars are being spent on facial recognition CCTV projects. And there was a lack of corresponding legislation that could potentially prevent this kind of abuse. So when technology is used to monitor what we say online, but not to fix the potholes in our roads or ensure medicine is in our clinics, we have to ask, who is the technology really serving? There are a couple of benefits if this is done right. Look at it in this way. For instance, fighting corruption. There are algorithms that can analyze vast datasets to flag irregular procurement patterns or suspicious asset declarations that would be invisible to the human auditors. We could see efficiency in aid delivery because we can use AI models to help governments and NGOs identify the most vulnerable households for social programs like PDM and EMUGA, ensuring aid reaches those who truly need it the most. And through automation, using chatbots and natural language processing, we can, significantly reduce the human backlog in public offices. And there is a prime example you can think about, for instance, in disaster response. In Ethiopia, where we have researchers using AI to analyze satellite imagery and climate data to predict droughts. And this allows for early warnings and more effective humanitarian responses, potentially, saving countless lives and livelihoods. So the risks, if we don't have these risks checked, and also try to enhance the benefits by doing this right, we could look at opaque decision making. If an AI system denies you a loan or a public service, who do you appeal to? How do you even appeal? Often the logic of the algorithm is a black box, making it it's impossible to challenge it. We could look at bias and discrimination. AI systems learn from data, and if that data reflects historical biases, then AI will amplify them. An algorithm made, kind of like deprioritize funding for a hospital in a historically underserved area simply because the data indicates low income activity. And we could also look at digital authoritarianism. When you look at technologies being marketed for national security, they can quickly become tools for controlling dissent. The combination of AI-powered social media monitoring tools and weak legal safeguards is a direct threat to freedom of speech. And there's always going to be exclusion by design, because when you have digital ID systems becoming the gatekeepers to citizenship, if you don't exist in a database, you cannot access healthcare, you cannot vote, you can, sometimes even get a SIM card, as we see every day in Uganda. So if you're not documented in Uganda, or like individuals in regions like Karamoja, you will face immense hurdles in accessing services because of issues with your national ID. So what can be done to mitigate all these risks and make sure that we are on the right path? We can build transparent systems. Governments should look at the logic of public sector algorithms as transparent as possible. Citizens have a right to know how decisions affect their lives and how those decisions are being made. We have to legislate for ethical AI. Africans, as African nations, we need to update our data protection laws, like the Uganda's Data Protection and Privacy Act of 2019, to specifically address automated decision making. We need to require AI impact assessments before deploying these systems in the public sector as a very critical step. And we also need to have citizen engagement. So public dialogue here is very essential and very key. Governments need to hold, forums. It could be conferences, town halls, or even meetups where they have to explain how AI is being used and provide clear avenues for citizens to provide feedback or opt out where it's visible. And we also need to look at capacity building. We need to train our public servants, parliamentarians, or judges on the fundamentals of AI. We have to have independent oversight bodies that are staffed with technical experts, and this should be established to monitor the government's use of these very powerful tools. So as we come to an end of this episode, here are the things that you need to remind yourself of. That AI in governance offers a dual promise. It can enhance transparency and efficiency, but it could also possess significant risks to privacy and human rights. From Rwanda's smart cities to Uganda's digital ID systems, AI is already reshaping how governments operate, and with both positive and negative consequences. And the future of democracy and digital rights in Africa will depend heavily on building strong legal and civic guardrails of this technology. Thanks for listening in to another episode of According to Wes. In the next episode, we shall shift from government down to our classrooms as we understand how AI is being used in education. Until then, bye-bye and keep it coy.